mail, and inside the cardboard box were layers of crumpled newspaper. And inside the layers of crumpled newspaper lay a long lavender seed pod. And it looked like a cross between a banana and a pine cone. And it was covered all over with little tiny thorns. And there was a note attached. It said, "The Queen of the Tropics. Make sure it gets all its nutrients." Well, Jeffrey's dad planted the seed pod that day, and overnight it sprung up into the most beautiful plant. It was covered in fine silver hairs, and each one of its leaves looked like a human hand with fringy edges. And when they blew in the breeze, they looked like they were flirting with you, like they were calling you closer and closer and closer. Well, Jeffrey's father, he was enchanted. He said, "I think this beauty is going to finally win me the first prize in the garden contest." And he spent hours looking for the actual Latin name in the botanical encyclopedia. He brought his friends, his neighbors, into the backyard to see if they recognized this plant. Nobody had ever seen a plant like this, but everybody agreed it was the most amazing plant in the world. Now, there was just one person who did not like the plant, and that was Jeffrey. His uneasiness began that very first week when he noticed that everybody who got close to that plant said the exact same thing. "It's the most amazing plant in the world." And it's not just what they said, it was how they said it, with their eyes gone glassy and their voices sounded far away. They looked like they had forgotten how to blink. Well, Jeffrey decided he wanted to tell his parents that he did not like the plant, but he didn't have the words, so all he could think to say was, "Well, it looks unfriendly." "Well, that's natural," said his mother, the psychologist. She said, "Children often have that reaction to new things or unknown experiences that often creates imaginary anxieties." Well, that night, Jeffrey heard his parents talking, and his dad said, "You know, Gene, if anything gives that kid imaginary anxieties, it's those stupid Captain Zappo comic books." Well, Jeffrey was stunned by this remark. He had never heard his father talk that way before. So the next day, Jeffrey was in his treehouse reading his Captain Zappo comic books, and it was a really hot day, and all the plants were laying low in the garden limp in the midday heat. Then he heard his father's voice come around the side of the house. He was talking to the postman. "Geez, Don, you gotta see this thing. It's the most amazing plant in the world." Now, was it Jeffrey's imagination, or did he see that plant pick itself up and make itself taller and more attractive when it thought it would be the object of admiration? And was it Jeffrey's imagination, or when he got close to those emerald green leaves, didn't he sense that they had a pulse? Almost like they had a heartbeat? Well, that night, the plant grew 2 more feet. Now the octopus arms are rolling all over everything in the garden, even Dad's prize-winning roses. And you know what? Jeffrey's dad didn't even seem to care. "Oh, the heck with those roses," he said. "Anyone can grow a rose. I'm making science history here. I'm going to write a monograph about this plant. It's the most amazing plant in the world." "But Dad, I think it's evil. It moves by itself and it has a heartbeat." Well, that's how Jeffrey's Captain Zappo comic books got taken away. Not only was he not allowed to read his comic books, but now he had to spend 20 minutes twice a day rolling the ball back and forth with baby brother Billy so that Billy would grow up to be a robust young man with no imaginary anxieties. Then the plant began to change. Those fine silver hairs turned into thorns. And then the plant put out flower pods the size of footballs. And those pods broke open in jagged, leering lines. And when Jeffrey looked inside the flowers, he saw they were filled with lavender jelly, speckled with black seeds. And pretty soon there were crickets and moths and bugs started getting caught in that lavender jelly, and they would get trapped there and they would die and decompose. Once Jeffrey even saw a bloated mouse stuck in the lavender goo. That's when he decided to stay as far away as possible from that plant. And then baby Billy disappeared. It happened one day when his mom had set Billy on the grass to play, and then she walked over to the fence to talk to the neighbor, Mrs. Crawford. And when she turned around, Billy was gone. I mean, how far could a baby get? They looked on the porch, they looked under the porch, they looked behind the bushes. Dad came out from the garage, even Mr. Crawford came out from the house. All the adults are looking for baby Billy, but he's nowhere to be found. At this point, Jeffrey is desperate. Can't you see? It's that plant! And he dragged his father over to the plant by his sleeve so he could see this plant was even sitting there, looking satisfied, like it had just eaten a big meal. And then Jeffrey saw his dad's eyes flash. He thought his dad was going to smack him one. Enough of your sci-fi nonsense, mister. If you can't help look for your baby brother, well, get in the house and go to your room, and why don't you just stay there? Well, Jeffrey ran to the house, all right, but he did not go to his room. He went to the kitchen, and he yanked open the knife drawer, and he grabbed the biggest, sharpest knife, the meat cleaver. And he ran back outside, and he ran past his mother, and he ran past Mrs. Crawford. Only Jeffrey's dad saw the glint of sunlight on the metal blade, and only Jeffrey's dad knew what he was about to do. No, Jeffrey, don't do it! But it was too late. Jeffrey was grabbing the plant with one hand and hacking away with the meat cleaver with the other, and the branches were freakishly strong, like they were fighting back. And the thorns scratched his face, and they scratched his arms. Wherever he slipped, that lavender goo was burning his skin. But he hung in there, and he severed every single branch that he could reach. Until at last, the plant gave a great sigh and collapsed like a fallen tent. And Jeffrey tried to catch his breath, and he dropped the knife, and he looked around, and he noticed that everything was actually exactly the same. The sky was blue, there was a butterfly that flew through the garden, and then he saw his father's face. His father's face was twisted up like he was going to start sobbing. And his mother, she had dropped to her knees and she was covering her face with her hands. And then Jeffrey looked at himself, and he was standing ankle deep in trampled stems and broken flowers and purple goo. And then they heard a noise. And one of the leaves rolled over, and there sat baby Billy in all that purple mess. His baby skin was red and rashy from the acid on his skin, and he had a seed pod stuck to his face. But when he saw his brother Jeffrey, his face broke out in a big grin, and he picked up that large leaf and he waved it like a parade flag. Now, Jeffrey's dad never won first prize in the garden contest, but that's okay. He decided to cement over the whole garden and take up jogging instead. And Jeffrey's mom, she gave back those Captain Zacko comics, and in 10 years' time, they were valuable enough to pay for his first year of college. And baby Billy grew up to be a robust young man with no imaginary anxieties. But ever since that day in the garden, he had a purple mark on his cheek. And when he was 17, he broke out in bloom. But that's a story for another time. This has been The Queen of the Tropics, written by Laurel Poe Gallagher.